Okay, friends, we're learning Torah today. We're learning the modern day mitzvahs. We're taking a little break as we are in between profundities. We're coming from to know God. We're preparing for another one. Yeah, but it's a lighter version. It's a light version. Okay, so even though Warren gave me a beautiful testimonial yesterday, thank you for that, Warren. Appreciate it. We are now learning the middle of mitzvah number 19, which is the positive commandment to declare the Shabbos holy with words, to verbally affirm the holiness of Shabbos. We spoke yesterday about the importance of saying Kiddush and the importance of saying Havdalah. Good morning, Dan. I'm in the middle of page 35 of this book, if you have the book. This is the book. It's called The Concise Book of Mitzvahs. Good morning, Elaine. Now, in addition to verbally affirming the sanctity of Shabbos, we spoke yesterday about the ribbon or the command of the prophets to honor as well as take pleasure in the Shabbos. So what does it mean to honor and take pleasure? He says honoring the Shabbos is cleaning up, taking a shower before Shabbos, and putting on clean clothing. Remember, in those days, it wasn't that simple taking a shower every day. Taking a bath was a major project. You had to chop wood. You had to heat the wood. You know, this was a half a day project, right? So you have to do that in honor of Shabbos. You also, and now the delight of Shabbos, and we said clothing was also honor of Shabbos, right? The delight of Shabbos is the meals, 3 meals you're supposed to have on Shabbos: Friday night, Shabbos day, and Shabbos afternoon. You're supposed to have enjoyable food and drink. Good. Now, in addition to all the above, it is also a mitzvah to arrange the table for a meal after the departure of Shabbos, even though more than an olive's amount is necessary for the meal to escort the Shabbos queen on her way. Let me explain. So, on Shabbos, we're supposed to have 3 meals: Friday night, Shabbos day, and Shabbos afternoon. You know, Shabbos is supposed to have a white tablecloth on the table. You're supposed to have a white tablecloth on the table. It makes it feel special. You know, you walk into a restaurant and there's bare tables. It doesn't feel as special as white tablecloths, freshly laundered, you know. It's not a proper Italian restaurant if it doesn't have nice white tablecloths, right? Same thing with their homes on Shabbos, right? Shabbos, you're supposed to have a white tablecloth. You know, this week my wife was telling me it was strange because we had 150 guests over here for Friday Night Live at Shul. But at home, we didn't have Shabbos dinner. So this week she said she forgot to put the tablecloth on the table, even though we weren't eating at home. And she said, it didn't feel right. Even for the kids, something was wrong. Because it wasn't Shabbos. You know, that's all part of the mitzvah of honoring the Shabbos. Yeah, but it's also the way that you feel on Shabbos. You know, we're very influenced by our clothing. It comes back to Klippa, right, to the perception. So, good morning, Corey and Garrett. So, after Shabbos as well, you're supposed to have a white tablecloth on the table. Even though the meal that you're supposed to have at the end of Shabbos is sufficient with an olive's amount is enough. What is this meal? Let's talk about this a little bit. It's called the Melave Malka. The Melave Malka, the escorting of the queen. Which queen? The Shabbos queen. You know, you have guests. They come. It used to be in the olden days. Remember, you used to go pick them up at the airport. You used to drive them back to the airport. Remember those days? Today, it's like they come by Uber, they leave by Uber. You know, you still take them? You still take them? Yeah, like my parents come, somebody, you know, special, you'll take them yourself, you know? But, you know, in many cases, you're like your guests. They come, they go on their own. They just knock on the door. You know, life is so easy today. But when somebody special comes, you're supposed to escort them away. In fact, there's a whole complicated or intense mitzvah called the mitzvah of the decapitated calf. Eglarufa, which happens when you find a dead person, a corpse in the field, and you don't know who did the murder. So what you do is you have to measure the nearest town. The sages come out, the Sanhedrin. It's a whole story. They calculate who is the closest town, and they decapitate the calf. And when they make a whole declaration, they say it wasn't our hands that poured this blood. What they're referring to is that we were not the ones that allowed this person to leave unescorted. In which case he was vulnerable and killed. Because had we allowed him to go with an escort, he would never have been killed. Right? So it's a safety thing. It's also an honor thing to escort them. So when the Shabbos queen, the Shabbos comes in on a Friday night, you don't just let her go. You escort her out with a meal. It's called the Melave Malka, the escort of the queen. By the way, why don't we do work on Shabbos? Why is it that you're not supposed to do work? Why is Shabbos holy? Because the Shabbos queen rests upon us on Shabbos. We actually read this in the Friday night service. You can see it in the prayer book. Where's that little Aramaic piece just after Lechadodi? Talks about the supernal union up above, the supernal union down below. The queen, the glory rests upon us down here below. What it's referring to is that we're in the presence of, who's the Shabbos queen? God Almighty. It's called the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, the dwelling of Hashem's presence upon us. When you're in the presence of Hashem, it's not respectful to be checking your emails. It's not respectful to be, changing your tire when the king is waiting for you at your kitchen table. Or queen, right? Genderless here. We're gender neutral. So
that's why I like the Shabbos queen.
You like that part? Good.
Well, because it is
interesting. So when you talk about queen and king, there's two elements. God obviously is not masculine or feminine. But when you're speaking about attributes of God that are giving, you'll speak about a masculine context. When you speak about God the way God receives, there would be more of a feminine context. It's an interesting concept.
God is a giver, so therefore.
Yeah, but there's elements of God that receive. Like why is the Shekhinah a feminine word? Shekhinah is a feminine word, which means in the grammar, and also the Shabbos queen. There's an element of receiving, I guess. Maybe we need to initiate the Shabbos atmosphere. Maybe, I'm not sure exactly. But when you're in the presence of the queen, of the king and queen, you're supposed to be respectful, and that's why you're not supposed to work on Shabbos. It's almost treason. It is treason to ignore the king with your own little menial tasks while the king is in your presence. After the Shabbos, you escort the queen with the meal. You're supposed to have a malava malkin. And this meal is a very interesting meal. Anybody here know about this meal, this Saturday night meal? You've heard about it? What you're supposed to do, you're supposed to have a meal, right? King David it's also known as Sudasa the Dovid Malka Mashiach, the meal of David, the King Mashiach. Why? What's the story here? Beautiful story. So King David was supposed to have been a stillborn. Did you know that? He was supposed to have been a stillborn. Why was he not a stillborn? Because when Adam and Eve were created, it says that God showed Adam, he put him into an IMAX theater, and he showed him all of the future generations that are going to live. He got a nice overview, a helicopter view of humanity. And he saw King David as a stillborn. And he said, this is not okay. This guy's such an important guy. We need him. We need him. How are we going to have the Mashiach? How are we going to have all these important people if King David is not, So God says there's no years for him. I don't have life for him. We're out of years. So Adam donated 70 years of his life to David. And that's why Adam lived only 930 years. And David lived 70 years. Now, these 70 years of David was told, he had a very complicated life, David, if you know his story, but he was told that he's going to die on Shabbos. So what did he do? He wanted to outsmart the angel of death, the Malach HaMavis. This actually is documented in Tanya chapter 1, the first page. What he did is that he knew the Malach HaMavis cannot claim a client, the angel of death cannot claim a client while he's learning Torah. So what did he do? On Shabbos, he would spend the entire 24 hours studying Torah. Incessantly, didn't stop. From the beginning of Shabbos until the end of Shabbos. In that way, he would spare another Shabbos. At the end of Shabbos, he would celebrate a meal of gratitude. It was called Sudasa, the David Malka Mashiach, the meal of David, the King Mashiach. And that's why it's called another name of the Melava Malka, right? Interestingly, how did David die? Is that it says that the angel of death needed to come up with a plan. So he made a hurricane. And David, who was learning Torah, comes outside and he wants to see what's going on because he hears tremendous noise. As he steps outside in the step, the angel of death arranged for it to be broken. See, he stood in the step and he lost his balance for a second. At that second, he wasn't studying Torah. Bam, that's when he died. Right? So that's when David died at 7 years old. He died on Shavuos, by the way. That's his yahrzeit. Now, another interesting thing, by the way, is that the resurrection of the dead is, we know from the Talmud. By the way, we have a Talmud class on Thursdays at 4:15 p.m., just before the men's club, just to let everybody know. We're studying about this in the Talmud. So the resurrection of the dead happens from the bone at the back of the neck, bottom of the skull. It's called the luz bone. And the Talmud tells us when the luz bone in Talmud, but in English, modern biology, I believe it's called the petrus bone, Petrous, petrus bone, which is a very interesting bone. I spoke about it recently at a sermon. But anyways, this bone is nourished only from the meal at the end of Shabbos. It's a very mystical meal. You see where I'm going with this? This whole thing, it's escorting the queen, it's feeding the bone that is resurrected, it's King David's gratitude meal. It's a very spiritual meal. That's what we're learning about over here. And that's the meal that you're supposed to have at the end of Shabbos, the Melava Malka. You'll notice if you've been to some of our Saturday night soirees here, we love to do these Saturday night soirees with special guests. We'll have a farbrengen with them when we can use a microphone. And we have that special meal on a Saturday night. Okay, so that's a special mitzvah to arrange a meal for a table for the meal after the departure of Shabbos. Good. Ramban wrote, Nachmanides, that it is also part of this positive commandment of remembering the day to remember the Shabbos every day. When do you have to remember the Shabbos? When do you remember the Shabbos? Only on Shabbos, or do you remember all 6 days of the week? Therefore, he explains when one mentions the days of the week, he's to say Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbat. Today is the first day of the Shabbos. Today is the second day of the Shabbos, and that's why in our davening, in our morning prayers, when we say Hayom Yom Revi B'Shabbos, we're mentioning Shabbos every day of the week. So we're fulfilling the mitzvah of remembering the Shabbos every single day of the week. So also in other matters, if he chances to get some good food, he should designate it for the Shabbos, saying explicitly, this is for the Shabbos. So my wife, my kids, they'll buy a dress, for example, for Shabbos Kodesh. They'll buy a special fish or a meat, a cut, for Shabbos Kodesh. My father actually has an interesting custom from Jerusalem, a Jerusalem custom that he says sometime randomly without warning during the Shabbos meal of Friday night and Shabbos day, while he's digging into the delicacies, he'll say, the Kavod Shabbos Kodesh Oivai, which is like a Jerusalem-style expression of Yiddish, in honor of the holy Shabbos, Oivai, Oivai. Just whenever he verbalizes it, right? It is in effect everywhere at every time for both man and woman, this mitzvah. It says Corey, also remember that you have to escort your guests to the door, not just wave goodbye from the table. Correct, Corey? Ed Hockman, good morning, Rabbi, to you too. Okay, let's go weiter further. Mitzvah number 20 is a positive mitzvah to rest from work on the Shabbos. Now this is a very, very big one. Even though we got one little paragraph here, but we'll have a lot to talk about, okay? So let me just read the inside first. That is a positive command. As the scripture says, on the seventh day you shall rest. How do the Christians interpret this verse? I don't know why they interpret the verse for themselves, but they do. They say you're not supposed to go to the office on Shabbos. You're supposed to rest. Great, right? But for the Jews, we know they moved it to Sunday. Yeah, they moved to Sunday. I don't know how that happened. But for the Jews, the Torah meaning of this verse is you shall rest on the Shabbos day. It doesn't mean from work. It means from labor. Let me explain, okay? But by this commandment, we also ordered and enjoined about our domestic animals that they should also rest from work. To tell a non-Jew to do some work is forbidden by a rule of the sages. It's called shvus, which is a rabbinic prohibition. It is in effect everywhere at every time for both man and woman. We can literally spend an entire year on this one mitzvah. Let me give you the background, the context, and explain to you what we're talking about. So, what does it mean you shall rest on the Shabbos day? Any ideas? Not to create. What does it mean to create?
Build.
To build. What does it mean to build? Correct, but let me explain. It's all connected to the law of adjacencies in the Torah. When we're commanded the mitzvah of resting on the Shabbos day, which is commanded to us in Parshas Vayakel, at the end of the book of Exodus, towards the end, it is adjacent to the law of what we're reading about in this week's Torah portion, which is the law of the building, the erecting of the tabernacle. Right next to each other. It says you should build the tabernacle, and then it says you should rest on the Shabbos day. So therefore, through the 13 principles of biblical exegesis, which we recite every morning at the beginning of our prayers, Rabbi Shmuel Omer, just before Hodu, we say these are the 13 principles of divine exegesis, which are the rules through which God wants us to extrapolate the laws of Torah, 13 different ways of doing so. One of them is the law of adjacency, that one teaches about the other. Whatever is considered a work in the construction of the tabernacle, of the temple in the desert, the portable temple, is also considered work on Shabbos. What is that? What is that? 39 different types of labor. So it's not work that's prohibited, it's constructive labor. And I believe that's what, Steve, you might have been referring to when you said create. It's constructive labor. So you're allowed to schlep a heavy box of books on your shoulders all day long inside your property. And you'll be sweating bullets like a chazer. but that's not considered working on Shabbos.
What about pushing a stroller? That's not creative.
Flicking a light switch is labor.
Pushing a stroller.
Pushing a stroller is labor. I'll explain to you in a second. So there's so much to talk about here. These 39 forms of labor are the 39 categories of work that were used or that were necessary in the construction of the tabernacle. For example, there is the process of making the walls, which would include catching an animal, slaughtering an animal, letting out its, tanning the skins, all that process, right? There's the process of dyeing, dying, which means cutting the grasses, collecting them, bringing them from the field to your possession, which is the pushing of the stroller, carrying something in a public domain, bringing it out from the field to the private domain. Then there is, the coloring, the cooking, the heating. So you're turning on the fire, you're turning off the fire, you're cooking. This is what we speak about the water boiler. You open the hot faucet on Shabbos, and the cold water goes into the hot water boiler. Now you're cooking, right? Then there's the processes of tying and untying, T-Y-E, right? Tying a knot, untying a knot. There's cooking and extinguishing, baking. These are the various processes which all are the 39 labors of Shabbos. You can look them up. I would love to one day give a class. I'm actually working on it somehow, some sort of a class on the laws of Shabbos. Okay, so
what does baking have to do with building the tabernacle?
So they had to bake the bread in the tabernacle.
But that's not part of the building.
The way the class that I want to teach is starting off in the original biblical labor and taking it all the way through to contact lenses. I want to take it through all the way down to contact lenses and strollers and modern day stuff, like motor cars. Understanding why and how it works, like using an elevator or a Shabbos elevator, how that originates in the biblical command, and take it all the way down to the practical application today. You understand what I'm saying? Like, for example, contact lenses, can you wear them in Shabbos or not? Is it considered carrying or not? Is glasses considered carrying? It's a question. Right? The answer is it isn't, because it's derech malbush. It's something that you wear, right? And it's necessary. For a woman to wear jewelry is a clothing. It's a garment. For a man to wear jewelry is forbidden, because a woman needs jewelry for clothing. A man wears jewelry as an unnecessary ornament. So watch on Shabbos is a very interesting discussion, right? Some people are stringent with it. It's more of a judgment call, because it depends. A watch is not just unnecessary jewelry for a man. Remember, the Torah says that a man is not allowed to wear the clothing of a woman. Lo yilbash gever simlas isha, which means that clothing which is unique to women, a man is not allowed to wear, which is why men are not supposed to wear jewelry. Extrapolating on that, Shabbos jewelry for a man is unnecessary. However, when it comes to a watch which is utilitarian, right? It's got a use. So here becomes a discussion about whether a watch is carrying or not carrying. You don't need to be overly stringent with this. I would encourage you not to be too careful with this. I'm pleased to say that here in Palm Beach Gardens, we've built an Eruv. An Eruv that encompasses all of Ballin Isles and Old Palm, all the way through to Chabad and Palm Beach Gardens to the shul. And anybody who lives in those communities can carry on Shabbos within the Eruv. Now, the Eruv is checked every week. So you have to check on Friday on the website to see if the Eruv is up or down. But what that means is it's a game changer for my family, for my kids and all the young families in the community, because the kids come on scooters now. They come to shul on scooters, and the mothers push the strollers. And people are able to carry their talesim and carry whatever they want to carry. It's a completely different ball game for the kids, for young families especially, to be able to carry on Shabbos that way.
I'd like to make a comment on the watch. Make sure it's not an electric watch.
You mean one that like these iPhone watches is much more complicated, because an iPhone watch is more of a cell phone than a watch. I think the one of the little things that it does, it tells the time. It's more of a phone, a computer.
I just got it as a present.
It happens to tell the time, right? But then you're talking about which kind of watch?
My rabbi said you can't iWatch.
I use this. I mean, I don't really wear it in Shabbos, but I wouldn't think it's a problem. It's a regular old stupid watch,
So is that why you don't wear a wedding ring?
This is the reason I don't wear a wedding ring. Correct.
Because it's jewelry.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, sometimes I have brides and grooms that tell me that they insist on exchanging rings. And I say to them, absolutely not. It's non-negotiable. You cannot do that under the chuppah. What you do after the chuppah is none of my business. But underneath the chuppah, he has to give her the ring through which he acquires her as his wife. But for there to be an exchange of rings is a different legal acquisition mechanism, which is not marriage according to Torah. So that's not anything which we allow. You're staring at me blankly. All right, good. Oh, you never wore Harvey?
And that's why.
And your wife's okay with it?
I don't wear a ring.
He didn't wear a ring because it was tough to date.
It interrupted his social.
So the question is if there's anything else to cover on this particular mitzvah of the resting on the Shabbos. Look, I mean, I could just expand it a little bit by saying this, that honestly, somebody once asked me, like, how do you rest on Shabbos? How do you not check your email? Yeah, how do you not? I don't understand. How do you not? Like, I look forward to Shabbos the whole week. Such a blessing. By the time that sundown comes in, I feel like an airplane landing. You know, it lands and you got those that like, you're like falling back in your seat. That's what I feel like coming into Shabbos. You've seen me. You know, I'm like, I'm just, whatever's done is done. Whatever's not done, too late. That's why that l'chaim is so important for me on a Friday night.
Let's talk about resting. I mean, sleeping on Shabbos. What about that?
So sleeping on Shabbos is considered part of the mitzvah of pleasure. It says, Sheina b'Shabbos tainug. Sleeping on Shabbos is considered pleasure of Shabbos. And there's not like a Shabbos afternoon nap, you know.
And does that mean you should not do it?
Should do it.
You should.
Yeah.
And also Marty likes to have, you know, on Shabbos afternoon, he likes to partake of some other pleasure. I understand.
How does he know these things?
Because you told me.
I never
Oh,
told him.
I'm sorry, Judy told me.
That's Friday night.
That's Friday night, actually, is what I said. So.
That's yeah, whatever. Okay, so
Isn't that part of Shabbos too?
yeah, that's part of Shabbos, of course. But guys, let me just tell you this. I just want you to realize that on Shabbos you're doing so many mitzvahs. You're doing so many mitzvahs on Shabbos. It's so beautiful. By you know, my wife recently gave a speech. My wife recently gave a keynote speech. I think I sent it to you already. You got it, right? She gave a keynote speech at her alma mater. Is that how you pronounce it? Alma mater? Alma mater in New York, in Brooklyn. She spoke about large families to Beis Rivka College. So she gave a lecture about large families and infusing passion into our families, large families. And one of the points that she spoke about was that we work so hard as shluchim to make Judaism fashionable and relevant to our communities. But what about our kids? Can we expect them to be inspired and follow in our footsteps only because they're our children? And somehow we will be crestfallen if they choose otherwise. So Hannah's speech was that we can't expect that from them. They're human beings too. And just as we work hard to attract our fellow Jews in Palm Beach Gardens, we need to work hard to attract our children to the values of Yiddishkeit. How do we do that in our house? So my wife says she spends a lot of time and effort in making beautiful tablescapes for Shabbos, making Shabbos always beautiful, making beautiful meals. You know, we haven't had guests during the pandemic, right? So does that mean that we're eating cereal Shabbos? No. We want our kids to know that they are the most important guests at our Shabbos table. Yes, you live here, but you're the most important people around our Shabbos table. And we work hard in creating an atmosphere of holiness that the kids can look forward to. And my kids wake up on a Wednesday morning. They're like, is it Shabbos today? Is it Shabbos yet? When is it going to be Shabbos? They can't wait for Shabbos. It's beautiful because they know that's when mommy and daddy are a little more relaxed, a little more focused, a little more present, right? It's a beautiful time. And, you know, we can really do this in our own homes for our own spouses and our own selves. You should come home on Shabbos with flowers Friday night. It was so weird this week because of Friday Night Live, I didn't have time to buy flowers for my wife. I bought the flowers on Saturday night. For whatever reason, I've never done that before. I bought the flowers Saturday night. And you know what? It just didn't feel...
Where do you get
Publix. But you didn't. But you didn't. It just didn't feel right. Like buying flowers on a Saturday night. Honestly, they haven't moved since I bought them in the same spot in the kitchen. It just didn't feel. Yeah, I want my wife to feel special. I want my kids to feel special. I want me to feel special. You can do so many mitzvahs on Shabbos by just buying a special piece of meat, by just making sure there's some nice salads, by making sure there's a nice tablecloth, the Shabbos candles. The place looks beautiful. Invest in silver candelabra. What does your wife light Shabbos candles? Is she using those tea lights, which is good, or is she using beautiful silver candlesticks that become a family heirloom? And I'm not talking about something which is 862 years old and banged up and whatever. How about something magnificent where you start a family tradition, right? Where you buy something gorgeous. You have a Shabbos silver pitcher. You have a flower vase that's something precious and beautiful, that's gorgeous. You have Shabbos dishes. You have, Chinaware, whatever. Something special that's Shabbos dishes, silverware. And when you do that, you're actually making a mitzvah, investing in the food and letting your wife know that you're here to help for Shabbos and inviting guests to your Shabbos table. And then on Shabbos itself, when you don't work, the not working on Shabbos, the resting, the sleeping on Shabbos is a mitzvah. Because every minute that you're sleeping, you're not driving, you're not emailing, you're not watching TV. Can you imagine if you make up your mind, you say, Shabbos, I'm not watching TV. I'm not watching TV. That's it. For the duration of Shabbos. I have people in the community that are secular. And they tell me that they've decided that they turn their phones off Friday night until Sunday morning. Not because they're being so religious, but because it's special family time. Can you imagine, right? Now, I want to encourage you to do this. Maybe you're not ready for a full Shabbos. How about a half Shabbos? Think about a half Shabbos. From Friday afternoon until Saturday morning, we don't work. We don't drive. We don't work. We don't do email, cell phone, whatever. Half a Shabbos.
Start with just Shabbos dinner.
Yeah, Shabbos dinner, exactly. But what would happen if you actually fell asleep, in a state of tranquility and serenity, instead of blaring bad news from the television, right? Another thing I want to tell you, I've said this before. If a guy tells me he has a Mercedes and a BMW, he says, Rabbi, the Mercedes is fully Shabbat observant. The BMW is working on it. Another guy tells me that he drives on Shabbos, but he only drives to shul and back. Right? He only drives to shul and back. He doesn't do anywhere else. And he never turns on the radio. He only listens to, I think, Jewish music maybe or something. Something like that. Or maybe no music. I can't remember. Let's take a look at the comments coming in.
In New Jersey, one shul has a Shabbos bus.
A Shabbos bus.
They move the shul, and the old timers who live around the shul can't get there. So, but they have a bus that takes them from where the shul used to be to the new shul.
It's like a Shabbos elevator, where it moves on its own. Let's say like a tram, which is electronically controlled. Yeah. Okay. So I just need a little expansion over here, just as we wrap it up here. Dan's asking, it doesn't stand the carrying in the strollers portion. Let me just explain what that's talking about, the carrying, okay? So one of the 39 things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, like turning on a fire, turning off a fire, tying a knot, untying a knot, sewing something.
So you have to wear loafers?
No, you can do that's an interesting discussion. That's a very interesting discussion. You're not allowed to do a double knot. You can do a single knot. You're allowed to do a single knot, like a slip knot you're allowed to do. But one of the things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos is to carry in a public domain. You can carry in your private address in a private domain. Like you can carry in a private domain, but you cannot carry in the public domain, which means even carrying a key or a wallet or a piece of paper, you can't carry in the public domain in Shabbos. Every 4 steps is technically a violation of Shabbos. Now, what we have done is built an Eruv. An Eruv is effectively, it's invented by King Solomon. It's a way of making a public domain privately walled. It's the minimum restrictions of a wall, basically, where it looks like a little wire, basically, hanging. And what happens is that you make a restriction, like a wall around a certain area, and now you're allowed to carry in that area in Shabbos. That would be making it like a private domain in which you're allowed to carry. All right, so hopefully that explains it, guys. I'm going to wrap it up over here. Today's Wednesday. Yeah.
When can you talk about cleaning the Shabbos table?
Cleaning the Shabbos table. Yeah, okay.
Can you do that, and how do you do that? And the second is about separating food. like eggs from the eggshell and things like that.
Okay, that's a lot to talk about. Can we discuss that tomorrow?
Sure.
We'll do it tomorrow. All right, good. Very good. If you just remind me to bring it up, all right? Thank you very much. All right, guys. Shalom. Have a good day. Take care. Thank you very much.